When the world goes quiet, some voices still remain. Not every soul finds peace when the clock strikes 12. There are stories hidden in the shadows, whispers drifting between the living and the forgotten. Some stories linger, some souls don't leave. Welcome to Stillness After Midnight, where every silence tells a story. If you're drawn to the mysteries that stir after dark, the voices that echo when the world sleeps, subscribe now and join us as we listen to the souls who still have something to say, because in the stillness, the truth finally speaks. My name is Daniel Carter, and I wasn't supposed to be there. Not that night, not in that place, but Tokyo, as I've come to learn, doesn't care about where you're supposed to be. Sometimes it just leads you. I'm 33 years old, an American systems engineer. I moved here 2 years ago under a company contract, a clean opportunity, a pay raise, a change of scenery. On the surface, it was progress, but deep down, I knew I came to Tokyo for another reason: to disappear. It's strange how a city so full of light can make you feel completely invisible. That evening had started like many others. We had finished a long sprint at work, and our team manager decided we needed drinks. Celebration, she called it. I didn't argue. The izakaya was loud, the laughter louder, and the beer flowed until the edges of the room softened. I left just after midnight, half tipsy, coat folded over one arm, mind fogged just enough to feel detached. The streets were quiet by then. Tokyo sleeps differently at night, not in stillness, but in retreat, like a shrine that closes its eyes when no one's watching. I took a long way home, maybe to stretch the buzz, maybe to avoid the silence of my apartment, or maybe some part of me already knew I was being led. It was near the fourth or fifth turn down a narrow back street that I first felt it, that subtle tightening in the chest, like the city had shifted, like someone was watching me from behind a shadow. I stopped, turned, empty. But that tension didn't leave. It sat at the base of my neck like a cold hand. The hairs on my arms rose. I walked faster. And then the footsteps came, soft, behind me, matching my pace. Not heavy, not aggressive, just intentional, measured. I stopped again. The footsteps stopped too. I turned sharply. Nothing. Only the distant hum of vending machines and the quiet crackle of a streetlight about to burn out. I told myself I was imagining it. Alcohol, fatigue, paranoia. Cities make people nervous in different ways. But as I turned down another alley, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. Steady. Closer now. This time I didn't stop. I ran. My footsteps slapped against the damp concrete. My breath grew ragged. My heart hammered in my throat. I cut through alley after alley, not knowing where I was headed, only that I needed to get away. Twisting left, then right again. Garbage bins blurred past. A laundry line slapped me across the cheek. Somewhere, a paper lantern swayed violently, though there was no wind. Eventually I stopped, bent over, gasping. No footsteps behind me, no sound at all. Only silence. And that's when I noticed it. My phone was gone. I must have dropped it while running, maybe back near the start, maybe just a block ago. Either way, I was alone, unarmed, unreachable. I looked around. The street I'd landed in felt different, older. The buildings leaned a little too much. The signs were faded, the windows dark. There were no stores, no taxis, not even vending machines. But there was something else. At the end of the street stood a staircase, wide, stone, leading downward. An old gate arched above it, wooden, cracked, eaten by age. There was no station sign, no lights, just a faint amber glow drifting up from below. And carved faintly into the beam above the stairway, barely visible beneath layers of soot and rot, were three kanji characters: Wang Rare Iwashure Rare Eki, the forgotten station. I didn't remember walking toward it, but suddenly I was at the top of the stairs. The city behind me had vanished into the fog. I stepped down. The air changed instantly, like stepping underwater. Everything muffled, thicker. The scent of old wood, damp stone, and burnt paper clung to my nostrils. The kind of smell you find in temples left unvisited for too long. Each step creaked beneath my weight, though the stairs were stone. When I reached the platform, it hit me. This place hadn't seen life in decades. Cracks split the floor like veins on a dying hand. The roof overhead sagged slightly, weighed down by time. Ivy grew through the tiles, curling like fingers reaching upward. And yet, a single lantern burned, paper, tattered, hung from a rusted hook. Its light swayed in a wind I couldn't feel. Below it, a bench, wooden, rotting, solitary. I stepped closer. There were no route maps, no ticket machines, only rusted rails swallowed by overgrowth, stretching into the black mouth of a tunnel that looked less like infrastructure and more like a gullet. I looked up. There, mounted crookedly above the tracks, was a clock, its hands frozen. 11:54 p.m. Not midnight, not yet, but close enough to feel it breathing down my neck. And then I heard it. Clack. A pause. Clack. Clack. The sound of wooden clogs on stone. Not footsteps. Echoes. I turned. Nothing. Only the empty platform and the swaying lantern. I sat on the bench, legs trembling. Maybe from the cold. Maybe from something else. Carved into the seat beside me were words. Deep, uneven. Some trains arrive only for the forgotten. I stared at them, and as I did, the clock buzzed faintly above. Not ticking, just humming, waiting. That's when I knew. I hadn't just found this place. I had been brought here. I don't remember how long I sat on that bench. The lantern above me swayed gently, casting trembling shadows that never matched my own. The clock remained frozen at 11:54 p.m., as if even time was afraid to move forward here. I stood up, legs stiff. My body still hummed with adrenaline, but there was nowhere left to run. The stairs behind me? Gone. Or at least they no longer led upward. I climbed them, twice, maybe 3 times, but each time I came back to the same platform, the same cracked tiles, the same swaying light. At first I blamed the panic, the alcohol, the exhaustion, but deep down, I knew better. This place had teeth, and it had already closed its mouth. I wandered along the platform, hoping to find some kind of exit, an emergency ladder, a service corridor, anything. Instead, I found a door, faded red, rusted shut. Beside it, a control panel so old it looked fossilized. Above the door, a metal plaque barely clung to the wall. Ji Yuan Juanyong for staff only. I stared at it. The metal seemed to breathe. Foggy, cold, alive. The door opened on the third push, groaning like a voice in pain. Inside was a small room, barely lit by a broken ceiling bulb. Dust floated like ash in the stale air. A desk sat in the center, its surface buried under yellowed newspapers, torn schedules, and something that looked like a radio receiver. I picked up the topmost sheet. The date was smudged, but I could make out the year, 1987. The headline in large kanji, Tao Lua Kong Ngoi Lai Gai Tainan Luk Nua Gem. Unmanned train causes midnight collision. I froze. The article mentioned an old freight line that had been decommissioned decades ago. It had once served a route between 2 rural districts, forgotten names I didn't recognize. But according to the report, one night, the station received a train that hadn't been scheduled. No conductor, no signal, no explanation. Just steel wheels grinding the track at exactly 11:59 p.m., plowing through the platform and into the tunnel beyond, where it disappeared. No bodies were found, no wreckage, only scorch marks and the echo of brakes that never stopped. The article ended with a quote from a station staff member. "We heard no engine, just the sound of passengers, dozens, whispering. But when we opened the doors, there was no one. I lowered the page, hands trembling. Was this the same station? No signs confirmed it. No maps, no names. But the architecture, the age, the silence. It all fit too well. I reached for the radio on the desk. It looked dead. Dust coated the dials. But something compelled me to touch it. The moment my fingers brushed the knob, static. Soft at first, then louder. Then, Chuyen Tao Koi Kung, Shin Moi Han Kach Len Tao. Final train, now boarding. The voice was distorted, echoing like an old announcement playing through a tunnel underwater. It faded, then silence again. I backed away. My heart felt cold, not just afraid, called, like something had spoken directly to the part of me that wanted to be forgotten. I stepped out of the room, back into the station, and something had changed. The lantern no longer swayed. It burned still, as if holding its breath. The clock, still 11:54. But I noticed something new now. Posters. They lined the far wall of the platform, dozens, all torn, faded, some nearly erased by time. I walked slowly, studying them. One was an ad for a summer fireworks festival from 1975. Another, a political campaign poster for a man whose eyes had been scratched out. Another, an ad for a missing woman, her photo black and white. A name below I couldn't pronounce. The date, 1991. I kept walking, and then I stopped. My eyes landed on a familiar symbol, a logo I recognized. It was my company's logo, the one printed on our project posters, but the colors were older, the font slightly different. I stepped closer. The paper was nearly illegible, warped from moisture, but I could still make out a date, October 18th, 2023, 2 years ago. I wasn't in Japan back then. I wasn't even on the team. But the ad showed a group photo, 6 people standing in front of a prototype machine, faces blurred from time, except one, mine. I stumbled back. That wasn't possible. Was it? I looked again, and the paper was blank, just a torn white sheet, like the wall had changed its mind about what I was allowed to see. I turned away, breath shallow, and that's when I heard it. A whistle, distant, mournful, too far to see, too close to ignore. The tracks began to hum, not loud, not mechanical, more like a vibration running up my spine. I stepped back, eyes on the tunnel. Nothing. Then, a flicker. A pale light deep in the blackness, growing brighter. Rhythmic, like a heartbeat made of electricity and fog. I didn't wait. I ran. Not toward the exit, there was none, but along the platform, away from the tunnel, toward the stairs, toward anything. I reached the stairwell, breath ragged, and froze. The stairs now led downward. I took a step, then another. Stone beneath my feet, wet, breathing. At the bottom, a second platform, identical. Same bench, same lantern, same clock. 11:54. Again. But the lantern was already lit, and this time someone was sitting on the bench. A woman, dressed in white, still as a statue, face turned away. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The air was thick with something ancient, a grief that didn't belong to me. The train whistle blew again, closer now. But this woman, she didn't move, didn't flinch, just sat, waiting. For what? I didn't know. Or maybe I did. I don't remember deciding to move. One moment I stood at the bottom of the stairs frozen. The next, my feet began to carry me forward. Slow, uncertain steps. Like I was wading into a dream I'd had before, but never finished. She sat perfectly still. A woman in white. Not the sterile white of hospitals or clean linens, but something older, funereal, like a kimono worn in mourning. Her long hair spilled like shadow down her back. She was slender, fragile looking, but nothing about her seemed weak. Even from behind, there was an aura about her. Not just presence, intention. The bench creaked faintly as I drew near, though she didn't move. The lantern above us burned without a flicker, casting a warm circle of amber light over the stone floor. There was a space beside her on the bench, empty, almost as though it had been waiting for someone. I hesitated. "Excuse me," I said, voice barely above a whisper. No reaction. Closer now, I noticed something strange. Her shoulders, though still, weren't rising and falling. She wasn't breathing. Or if she was, it was too faint for the eye to catch. I sat down slowly, leaving a respectful gap between us. The wood beneath me was cold. Too cold. As though no one had sat here for a very, very long time. We sat like that for a minute, maybe more. The only sounds, the faint hum of the lantern and my own heartbeat. I glanced sideways. Still, she didn't look at me. But something in the air had shifted. It was heavy, not oppressive, but expectant, like the moments before rain. I cleared my throat. "I'm lost," I said. The words sounded stupid the moment they left my mouth. Of course I was lost, but something deeper inside me knew I wasn't just lost in space. I was lost in time, in meaning. She turned her head, slowly, deliberately, not all the way. Just enough for me to see part of her face in the corner of my eye. Pale skin, sharp cheekbones, lips that looked like they'd forgotten how to smile. But it was her eyes that froze me. Not because they were empty, but because they were full of something ancient. Sorrow, yes, but also memory. She looked at me, not surprised, not curious, just knowing, like she had seen me before, in another version of this night, on another loop of this strange circle. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, barely above silence, but it carried. "You're not the first." I blinked. "What?" "They come when they run," she said. "When they fear. When they forget the way home." Her words floated in the air like incense smoke, slow, curling, refusing to fade. I felt cold deep in my chest. "Who are you?" I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked down at her hands, folded neatly in her lap. Thin fingers, still, graceful, like porcelain. I tried again. "Do you know what this place is?" She paused, then barely audible. "This is the last platform, for those who missed something." The words stirred something in me. "Missed what?" She turned her face forward again. The silence returned, but now it felt different. Not peaceful, not waiting, but warning. I looked at the clock. Still 11:54 p.m., still frozen, still watching. I stood slowly, unsettled. She didn't move, not even when I backed away. But as I turned to go, thinking I'd climb the stairs, even if they only led me back here, I heard her voice again, soft, clear. "Don't board the train." I turned. She hadn't moved, but her words echoed in my skull. "Don't board the train." "What train?" I asked. But she was silent once more. I turned away, climbed the stairs. They led, of course, back to the same place. The first platform, the same bench, the same lantern. But she wasn't there anymore. The bench was empty, cold. I stood still, unsure if I had imagined it. The woman, the words, the second platform. Maybe the whole thing was a drunken hallucination, a bad dream bleeding through the seams of waking life. But then I saw it, beneath the lantern on the bench where she had sat, a single white chrysanthemum, fresh, untouched, and resting beneath it, folded with care, a train ticket, old-fashioned, printed on cream cardstock, faded black ink. The departure time, 11:59 p.m., destination, blank. I picked it up carefully. The paper pulsed faintly with warmth, and in that moment, something inside me whispered, "You've missed something too." I stood there for a long time. The train ticket felt heavier than it should have, not by weight, but by presence, as if it carried more than just a time and a blank destination. 11:59 p.m. Only 5 minutes from now, if the clock were ever willing to move. I slipped the ticket into my coat pocket without knowing why. It was warm to the touch. And when my fingers left it, they tingled slightly, like they'd brushed against static or something alive. I glanced up at the station clock. Still 11:54 p.m., still unmoving, the hands stiff like the fingers of a corpse. But something in the air had shifted. Not colder, not darker, denser. The kind of thickness you feel in your lungs when you're about to cry or scream or both. The lantern above the bench flickered for the first time since I'd arrived. Just once. A quick spasm of light, then still again. But it was enough. Something was coming, and I wasn't the only one who felt it. The platform, empty seconds ago, now had footsteps in it. Not visible ones. Not even audible at first. Just a tremor in the atmosphere. A suggestion of presence. I backed away from the bench. The chrysanthemum was gone. The ticket in my pocket buzzed faintly, as if responding to something far away and approaching. Then I heard it. Not a whisper. Not a voice. A sound that didn't belong to this place. A long, distant whistle. High-pitched. Hollow. Ancient. It echoed through the tunnel with an impossible weight, as if it wasn't just moving through air, but through time. The sound came from deep within the darkness beyond the tracks, too far to see, yet close enough to feel in my bones. I turned slowly toward the tunnel. It stared back, a yawning black mouth. The lanterns lining the tunnel walls, long dead, flickered awake, one by one. Pop, pop, pop. Light spread like a disease down the steel ribs of the tunnel, toward me. With each new flicker, the rumble grew stronger. The whistle sounded again, clearer, closer. I should have run, but fear had changed shape. It was no longer panic. It was recognition. Somehow I knew what was coming. Even if I didn't understand it, the platform began to vibrate. Softly at first, then more. My shoes buzzed against the cracked tiles. Dust rained down from the ceiling like gray snow. A gust of wind swept through the station, sharp, sudden, and directionless. It didn't come from the tunnel. It came from everywhere at once. Behind me, the station clock buzzed again. Not ticking, just struggling. A mechanical groan, like a voice trying to wake up after a long, long sleep. 11:54, still frozen, and yet the train came. I saw the light first, not warm like the lanterns, but sterile, harsh, blue-white, like the flicker of an old CRT screen in a locked basement. It pierced through the tunnel darkness. A single headlight, then another, and then the outline of a train, not like any I'd seen in Tokyo or anywhere. It was longer, lower, its surface matte black, absorbing the light instead of reflecting it. And its windows were dark, not dim, dark, as if whatever was inside refused to be seen. But I could feel them, eyes behind the glass, watching, waiting. The train didn't screech to a halt. It glided smoothly, soundlessly. Even the vibration seemed to stop as it approached the platform. I took a step back. My heel tapped the edge of the stairwell. The doors didn't open. Not yet. The train just waited, breathing, and I realized something terrifying. I couldn't hear my own breath anymore. The station had gone perfectly silent. Not a hum, not a whisper, not even the tick of the cursed clock. Only the absence and the weight of whatever rode inside that train. Then, the doors opened. Not all at once, just the one in front of me. With a hiss, a stale, warm air spilled out. It didn't smell like decay, or rot, or fuel. It smelled like dust, paper, forgotten things. The kind of scent libraries exhale when you open a book that hasn't been touched in decades. Inside, the lights were dim. I couldn't see any seats or passengers, just that endless aisle, leading back, far, far back, too far for a normal train car, like it stretched beyond what space allowed. The urge to move forward was overwhelming. My feet shifted, one step forward. Then, her voice. "Don't board the train." It wasn't a shout, just a whisper, but it came from everywhere at once. The lantern, the tunnel, the air itself. It was her, the woman in white. I turned. She wasn't there, but the bench she had sat on, the lantern above it, dark now, extinguished. The ticket in my pocket burned. I pulled it out. The ink had changed. The destination was no longer blank. It now read, recollection. I stared at it, and suddenly I understood. This wasn't a train to somewhere. It was a train to something. Something inside. Something buried. And once I boarded, if I boarded, I wouldn't return the same. If I returned at all. The train hissed again. Doors still open, waiting, inviting. The lights inside blinked once, then steadied. And far at the end of that impossible aisle, I saw it. A single figure, standing, still, no face, just shape, watching. Me. I don't remember lifting my foot. I only remember the sound, the hiss of the door like a breath being drawn in, the faint creak as I stepped across the threshold. The moment I boarded, the air changed. Heavier, older. It felt like walking into a place that had been sealed shut for centuries, and yet it had waited for me. Inside, the train was wrong. It looked like a passenger car at first glance. Aisle, windows, poles. But the deeper you looked, the more details frayed at the edges. The walls curved inward unnaturally. The lights above pulsed faintly, as if unsure whether to stay on. There were no signs, no advertisements, no station maps, only blank panels, stained by time and something darker. And then there were the passengers. I saw them after my third step in, scattered along the length of the car, some seated, some standing, all facing forward, all utterly still. Men, women, a child in a school uniform, an elderly man in a suit with a frayed briefcase resting on his knees. None of them moved, not even to blink. I stopped walking. My mouth had gone dry. They weren't asleep. They weren't unconscious. They were paused. Their eyes were open, but unfocused, glazed, hollow, like the light had gone out behind them long ago. I took a cautious step forward. The floor beneath me didn't creak, didn't shift. It breathed, just once, a faint upward pulse, as though I'd stepped onto the chest of something sleeping. I passed the first man, a middle-aged salaryman, tie askew, skin grayish, eyes staring blankly at the window. I leaned slightly. His chest didn't rise. He wasn't breathing. I reached out against every instinct and gently waved a hand in front of his face. Nothing, not even a twitch. But the moment my fingers passed the space in front of his eyes, the lights above me flickered, all of them, then steadied. I pulled my hand back. My skin tingled. The man remained still. I kept moving. Each new figure I passed whispered something into my bones. Stories I didn't want to hear. Regret, loneliness, a last word never said, a mistake never undone. They wore it like invisible clothing. I passed a woman clutching a purse in her lap, her knuckles white, frozen in a grip that should have faded with rigor mortis. But she wasn't dead. Not exactly. None of them were. I wasn't sure if they were even passengers, or if they were cargo. And then I saw one that made me stop cold. A boy, no older than 10, wearing a school backpack, shoes muddy, a small scrape on his cheek. He was standing, unusual compared to the others, holding onto a pole. His eyes were open, and he was looking at me, not past me, at me. My breath caught. I took a half step back. His head turned slowly, following my movement. His expression was blank, but his gaze was alive, too alive. And something behind his pupils looked wrong, not malicious, not childlike, just tired, unimaginably old. I tried to speak. Are you all right? No response, but his eyes stayed locked onto mine. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes again, he was gone. Only the pole remained, empty, as if he had never been there. I spun around. No sign of him, no footsteps, no whisper, no trace. Just the other passengers, still frozen. I began to move faster now down the aisle, past more of them, each one more hollow than the last. One seat held nothing but a faded scarf. Another, a doll, porcelain and cracked, resting in a child's seat. Its glass eyes were fogged, but one of them seemed to shimmer faintly as I passed. I reached the midpoint of the car. The aisle kept going, far longer than the length of the train from outside. That's when I noticed the scenery outside the windows had stopped changing. It had become a blur of gray. No city lights, no tunnels, no darkness, just motionless fog, as if we were gliding through a space that didn't exist. And yet the train was moving. I felt it in my gut, in the vibration beneath my feet, in the way my balance shifted as I walked. Then, from far down the car, a sound, faint, wet, dragging, like something pulling itself along the floor, coming from the far end, where the light was dimmer. I strained my eyes, nothing moved, but the sound continued. Shh, shh, shh. Something was coming, but not like the train, not smooth, not ghostly. It was wrong. A scraping, a crawling, and worst of all, it was getting closer. I stepped back. My heart thudded against my ribs. The other passengers remained still, unaware or uncaring. I turned, looking for a door. There was one just behind me, a sliding panel, half open. I slipped through and found myself in the next car, empty, completely, no passengers, no lights, only the dim reflection of myself in the glass window, pale, wide-eyed, mouth slightly open. But as I looked closer, I noticed something in the reflection that made my stomach drop. A shadow, just behind me, moving, breathing. I spun around. The reflection had lied. There was no one behind me, no shadow, no breathing, only the empty train car, humming with that same dull electricity, as if the walls themselves were remembering something too painful to name. But I didn't believe it. The reflection had shown a shape. It had moved. Not imagine. Not alcohol. Not fear. Real. I backed up slowly, pressing against the cold glass of the sliding door behind me. The silence had returned, but it was no longer passive. It watched, and it waited. I reached for the door. It opened with a reluctant hiss, and I stepped back into the previous car, where the passengers still sat like wax figures caught mid-thought. The boy was gone, his place empty. But something else had changed. At the very front of the car, just beneath the exit sign, a figure now stood. The woman in white. She was facing away, again, her long hair draped down her back like flowing ink. Her hands rested at her sides, motionless. I didn't remember seeing her step in. She hadn't passed me. And yet, there she was. I took a step forward, then another. She didn't move. The air grew heavier with every inch between us closing. The lights overhead dimmed slightly as if drawing in their breath, unsure whether to reveal too much. My voice came out dry. "You were on the platform." No response. I tried again. "What is this place?" Still nothing. But then she turned, slowly, deliberately. Her face was clearer now, pale like porcelain left too long in a cabinet. Eyes dark, but not hollow. No, they were full, too full, like deep wells that didn't reflect light. And she was smiling, a small, polite smile, closed lips, timeless, but it didn't reach her eyes, not even close. There was no warmth in it, only knowledge. The smile of someone who had seen too much and would say too little. I felt a chill settle in my spine. I'd seen that smile once before, years ago, on my mother's face, the night before she died, when she looked at me as if she wanted to say something, but knew it was already too late. I shook the thought. "You warned me," I said, voice trembling, "not to board the train." The woman's head tilted slightly. She took a step forward. Her white kimono didn't move with her. It floated, weightless. She reached into her sleeve and pulled out something small, pale, thin. She extended her hand. It was a photograph. Old, frayed at the corners, black and white. I hesitated, then took it. My fingers trembled as I looked down. The image was blurry, but clear enough. A man, a woman, and a child, standing in front of a train platform, smiling. My throat dried, because the man was me, older, sadder, but me. And the child, maybe 6, maybe 7, clung to my hand, half smiling with eyes just like mine. I'd never seen this photo in my life. And yet, I remembered taking it. I remembered her name, Hannah, the girl I never had, the girl who could have been. My knees buckled slightly. The woman in white still stared at me, still smiling. I whispered, "What is this?" She finally spoke, soft, low, a voice coated in distance and dust. "You boarded before. You just don't remember." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" Her eyes never left mine. "This train returns only for those who forgot why they came." I swallowed hard. "I'm not dead. Not yet." Her answer was so calm, so gentle, it felt like a lullaby. I looked at the photo again. The image was fading now, slowly, as if washed away by invisible rain. Within seconds, it was blank. I dropped it. It vanished before it hit the floor. The woman stepped closer, too close. I smelled incense, cedarwood, ash, morning. I stepped back instinctively, but she didn't follow. She simply said, "You still have time, but not much." And just like that, she turned, walked to the nearest door. It opened without her touching it. She stepped through, gone. No trace, no sound, just that lingering scent, and a pressure in the air that pulsed like a second heartbeat. I stood alone in the train car, passengers still frozen, but something inside me had changed. She knew me. She had seen other versions of me. And this place, it didn't just carry souls, it carried regrets, memories, fragments. It was a vessel for things left undone. And somewhere deep inside, I was beginning to remember what I had come here to forget. I sat down, not because I was tired, but because the weight of the photograph, now vanished, still clung to my hands like wet ash. The bench beneath me felt more like stone than wood, cold, unforgiving. The air inside the car remained thick with stillness, but it no longer pressed against me with fear. It pressed with memory. Across from me, the frozen passengers stared forward, eyes glazed, bodies unmoving. They didn't react. They hadn't since I'd boarded. But now I began to wonder if it wasn't that they couldn't move, but that they were watching something I couldn't yet see. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, to breathe, to listen, to whatever it was that had begun whispering beneath the noise. And then, I wasn't on the train anymore. I was standing on a different platform. Daylight, noise, wind, Tokyo Station. 10 years ago. I recognized the tiles, the overhanging beams, the smell of warm engine oil and metal. Trains roared and hissed in the background. People moved quickly, fluidly, with bags and phones and coffees in hand. And there I was, younger, cleaner shaven, wearing a university hoodie and a backpack too heavy for my frame, standing near the yellow safety line, checking my phone every few seconds. Nervous, rushed. I was waiting for someone. I didn't know who until I looked up and saw her, the same woman from the photo, not in white, not spectral, just human. She was waving as she approached, a little girl holding her hand. The girl, Hannah. She looked maybe 6. her hair in two short pigtails, shoes lighting up slightly with each step. I watched the younger me brighten when he saw them, smile, but there was something else in that smile. Regret. Even before it began, the woman, her name on the tip of my tongue, handed me an envelope. She looked exhausted. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the noise. Just take her for the weekend. You said you'd try. That's all I'm asking. The younger me hesitated, looked at his phone again. I can't. Not this weekend. I told you, we're pushing for a release. I can't risk messing it up. Her expression darkened. The girl looked up at both of them, silent. The woman leaned in. You always say that. The train arrived with a thunderous rush. Doors opened. People flooded out. I watched myself take a step back. She shook her head, turned, and stepped onto the train with Hannah. They disappeared into the crowd, and he stood there, motionless, holding nothing, not even the envelope. The memory changed, blurring, shifting, and suddenly, night, sirens, smoke, flashing red and blue. I was at the same station, but everything was broken. Bent steel, shattered glass, bodies covered in silver blankets. The platform was scorched in places, warped like something had clawed through it. People screaming, lights flickering, and in the center of it all, the wreckage of a train, twisted, charred, wrong. I moved through the chaos like a ghost. No one saw me. No one touched me. And then I saw them, her body, covered, and beside it, a small shoe, pink, with a blinking light, still flashing once, twice, then never again. I gasped and opened my eyes. Back on the train, same seat, same silence. My hands were shaking. My eyes were wet. I remembered now. I hadn't thought about them in years. I had buried them, chained that memory, locked it away. Not because it hurt too much, but because I couldn't accept how little I had done, how easy it had been to turn away, to choose convenience over connection, to say next time and believe there would be one. But there wasn't. There never was. And now, I was here, on their train. The passengers were still, but something in their stillness had changed. I could feel it now. They weren't simply watching the aisle ahead. They were watching me, not with anger, but with recognition and maybe pity. The train lurched, just slightly, not enough to throw me off balance, but enough to remind me it was moving. Where to? I looked at the windows. The gray blur outside had changed. There was light now, but it didn't resemble day or night. It was like watching candle flames underwater, flickering, stretching, alive. Shapes moved beyond the glass. Not people, moments. A hand reaching for another and missing. A suitcase left at a door that never opened. A child waiting for someone who never came. All tiny stories of absence. And one of them was mine. The train gave a soft, mechanical sigh, and the overhead speakers crackled to life. Next stop! The voice was warped, distorted by age and some deeper wrongness. Then silence. No destination announced, only the rustling of old air and the echo of what could have been. I looked down at my hands. They were still shaking, but they were still warm, still real. The woman in white had said, "You still have time." And I wondered, could this train take me back? Or was it only here to remind me why I was never meant to move forward? The train moved without sound. Not the mechanical churning of steel against steel, not the low hum of electricity, just a slow, deliberate glide, like a funeral procession for memories too restless to stay buried. I stood in the aisle, gripping the cold metal pole beside me. My legs still trembled from the flood of memory. My chest felt hollow, but my breath, unlike the passengers around me, still fogged the glass. I was still alive, but I didn't know for how long. I turned slowly to look at them. The passengers. They hadn't moved. And yet, They had shifted. Their bodies faced forward, yes, but now a few of them, 3, maybe 4, had tilted their heads ever so slightly, as if acknowledging some unseen sound. Their lips parted, dry, cracked. Still no breath escaped them, but their eyes were no longer empty. They shimmered faintly, as if behind them a film was playing. And slowly I began to understand. They were reliving, not riding. This train wasn't taking them somewhere. It was bringing them back, again and again. I stepped forward, hesitant, and paused beside a woman in a brown coat. She looked like she might have once worked in an office. Elegant posture, fingers curled lightly in her lap. Suddenly, without warning, she moved. Her eyes widened. Her head snapped to the side, and she began to speak, but not to me. "No, don't go in there. It's not safe." Her voice was dry, broken, desperate, but her face showed no awareness of the train, of me, of anything present. She was elsewhere, trapped in then, not now. I froze. Then it stopped. Her mouth closed. Her hands returned to her lap. Her eyes went blank, still, like nothing had ever happened. I backed away, heart thudding. Across the aisle, a teenage boy suddenly leaned forward. His arms jerked slightly, as if reaching for someone just out of sight. "Wait, wait, I didn't mean to." Then silence, stillness, again. I spun around. The passengers weren't alive, but they weren't dead either. They were caught in their last moments, their greatest regrets, their final choices. And they had been here for years, decades, maybe longer. This train wasn't a vehicle. It was a mirror, one that showed them the moment they failed and made them live it forever. I gripped the pole tighter. If I stayed too long, would I begin to remember too much? Would I start to relive it? Would my body still walk while my soul was locked in the instant I turned away from Hannah and her mother? And then I saw it. Him, the boy, the same boy I had seen earlier, the one who had vanished. He now sat near the back of the car. His feet didn't touch the floor. He swung them gently, rhythmically. But his face, this time it was turned fully toward me, and his eyes were not blank. They were full, not of fear, not of anger, but of recognition. He nodded, just once, then lifted his hand and pointed toward the next car. The gesture was small, barely a motion, but unmistakable. I hesitated, then I moved. The sliding door between the cars opened slowly. The hinges let out a low groan, like something half asleep being stirred. Inside was darkness. No lights, no passengers, just a corridor swallowed in shadow. I stepped through. The door closed behind me, and I felt the shift immediately. The cold, the wrongness, like walking into a mouth right before it closes. There were windows here too, but they showed nothing. Only black, not the black of night, but the black of no longer existing. I moved slowly, running my hand along the wall to stay oriented. Then up ahead I saw a flicker, faint, blue-white, like the static of a forgotten television. I approached it and found a screen, old, embedded in the wall like a relic, covered in dust. It buzzed softly, flickering, glitching, and then it began to play. A scene, not a video, a memory, mine. I saw myself, older again, sitting alone in a hospital waiting room, a paper coffee cup in hand, my face pale, blank. There was no sound, only flickers of fluorescent light. Then, a nurse walked up, said something. I saw myself react, lips parting, eyes losing light. The cup fell from my hand, and then static. The screen cut out, replaced with 3 words printed in simple white font on black. "You left her." I stared. The words didn't blink, didn't fade. They knew. This place knew. It remembered everything I tried to forget. It carried not judgment, but record. I turned away, and now, from the corners of the car, I began to hear it, The footsteps, soft, bare, many of them, walking along the walls, through the shadows, through time, returning, not in rage, but in ritual. They were coming back, because they always did, because every night at 11:54 p.m., they boarded this train again, not to go anywhere, but to remember what they could never escape. And I was beginning to feel it too, that gravity, that pull toward the moment I turned away, the moment I chose comfort over courage, the moment I let a door close and never tried to open it again. And if I didn't find a way to break free, I would return too, tomorrow, and the night after, and every night after that, until I became like them. The whistle blew, low, long, hollow. It didn't sound like metal. It sounded like mourning, the kind of sound the earth might make if it could grieve. The train began to slow, but not with a screech or a shudder, just a gradual slip into stillness, like something settling into a grave it had lain in 1,000 times before. The windows remained black, but the pressure shifted. I could feel it in my chest first, then in my knees, a kind of gravitational ache pulling downward. Not just physically, emotionally. The train was arriving at its next stop, and I didn't want to see where that was. I moved quickly, through the next sliding door, back into the main car where the passengers had remained unmoving for what felt like hours. But now, they were standing, all of them, without sound, without warning. Every figure I had passed, frozen in their seats or gazing blankly ahead, now stood in perfect unison, facing the same direction, toward the door. Their eyes were open, wide, their mouths still closed, their hands at their sides. No shifting weight, no blinking, no breath, just readiness. I froze mid-step. The boy was there again, closer this time, not in a seat, not standing, but at the center of the aisle, looking directly at me. He lifted one hand, slowly, then pointed at the door behind me, the one leading to the final car. I didn't turn. Something inside me knew what waited beyond that door. A platform. Not just a platform, the platform where they got off, where the loop began again, where the living became still. The whistle blew again, this time shorter, sharper. The lights in the car flickered violently, once, twice, then steadied. And then the doors opened. Not the one ahead, not the one behind, but both sides of the train, as if the train existed in two places at once. Beyond the doors, fog, thick, rolling, lit from beneath by an unseen glow, and through it, vague shapes, station pillars, a bench, a clock. I squinted. 11:54 p.m. Still, always. My hands began to shake. My body leaned forward slightly, just an inch, but enough to know the pull was real. It was like being caught in a tide, a current made not of water, but of remorse. My muscles tensed, but still, my legs shifted. An unconscious step. I reached out, grabbed a pole, held tight. The boy still stared, not accusing, but expectant. He stepped closer, his lips parted, and for the first time I heard his voice. Small, unstable, like something remembered from a nightmare long buried. It's easier if you don't fight. I shook my head. No. He blinked, slowly. You already chose. Another step toward me. I gripped the pole tighter. This place isn't for the dead, I said. It's for the forgotten. The boy tilted his head. Same thing. Behind him, the other passengers began to move. Still silent, still slow, but moving. Toward the doors, not marching, not fleeing, just surrendering. As if they'd done this countless times before. And they had, every night, the returning dead. One by one, they passed me. None touched me. None looked at me. They simply stepped through the doors and disappeared into the fog. No noise, no goodbye, only the hollow whisper of shoes on steel. Then it was just me, And the boy. He stepped forward again, now only inches from me. I could see something in his eyes. A reflection, a memory. My face. Older, more tired, darker. I whispered, "What happens if I step off?" He looked up at me. "You forget again, until tomorrow night, and the night after that. And if I stay on, you still forget, but slower. Is there another choice?" He didn't answer, because we both already knew the truth. The train didn't care about choices, it cared about loops. And mine was tightening. I could feel my fingers loosening from the pole. Not because I wanted to let go, but because I was starting to believe. I belonged here. The train didn't trap you. You did. With every regret, every delay, every chance you let go, thinking you'd get another. That was the true engine of the train. Not steam, not electricity, but shame. And mine had powered this car for far too long. The boy reached out, took my hand. His fingers were cold, too cold. I opened my mouth to speak, but the train shifted, jerked, a violent lurch. The lights sparked, the horn blared, and I stumbled backward. The boy's grip slipped. My back slammed into the floor. The doors slammed shut. The fog vanished. And suddenly, I was alone. The boy gone. The passengers gone. Only silence remained, and the sound of the clock ticking for the first time. 11:55. It had moved by 1 minute. Just one. But it was something. The train was silent again. Utterly. No footsteps. No whispers. No ghosts flickering at the edge of vision. Just the gentle hum of motion beneath my feet. But this time, I knew. I was the only one left on board. Or so I thought. I moved slowly, unsure if the train was looping again, or simply drifting through a place without time. Each car I passed was empty, not just of people, of presence, like something had been drained from the air itself, until I reached the car near the front and saw her, the woman in white, sitting alone on a bench, same posture, same stillness. But something was different. She wasn't looking forward this time. She was waiting. For me. I stepped in, and she turned her head before I could speak. Her eyes met mine. Calmer now. No longer that hollow knowing I'd seen before. There was something almost kind in them. I stood in the aisle for a moment before walking to the seat across from her. She nodded slightly, a gesture more human than ghost. I sat. The light overhead flickered, but held steady. Her voice came before my question. "You lasted longer than most." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer directly. Just looked out the window, though there was nothing to see but shifting darkness. "Most step off before the clock moves. Most don't even fight." I swallowed hard. "I nearly didn't." She smiled. It was faint, melancholy. "That's why you're still here." We sat for a moment, the space between us full of things unsaid. Then she spoke again. "I once boarded this train, not to escape, not to forget, but to wait." Her eyes glazed slightly, as if seeing something I couldn't. "I had a son. He was 9. I told him I'd be on the platform when he came back from school, that we'd light the lanterns together for Oban." A beat passed. "But work called. Just one more shift," I said. "Just one more hour." Her hands folded neatly in her lap. "And then, the phone call." Her voice didn't shake, not even at the word phone call. It was the calm of someone who had cried every tear she had, centuries ago. The crossing gate malfunctioned. He was on the train, the one that never should have arrived. The breath caught in my throat. She turned to me. "I came here thinking I could wait long enough to meet him again. That one night the train would bring him back, that I'd be waiting this time." She looked down. "But ghosts don't ride for reunion. They ride because they cannot walk." And I stayed so long, I'd stopped remembering his face. Silence, but not empty. Just respectful. She lifted her gaze again. "You haven't forgotten yet." I met her eyes. And I knew she wasn't just speaking about Hana. She was speaking about choice, about intention. I whispered, "Why did you help me?" Her expression softened. "Because you're still afraid. And fear means there's still something left to lose. Most of them don't fear anymore. They've passed beyond that. You still feel guilt. And guilt," she paused, "means you still remember what should have been done." My hand instinctively went to the ticket in my coat. It was still there. The edges softer now, worn like a prayer slip. I pulled it out. The ink had changed again. No longer recollection. Now it said, choice. I looked up. "What happens if I stay?" Her voice was steady. "You'll forget again. Slowly, but it will happen. You'll find comfort in the routine, in the silence. You'll stop asking questions. And one night, the door will open, and you'll step out, thinking you were meant to." She leaned slightly forward. "But you're not meant to stay here, Daniel. Not yet." Her voice trembled, not with emotion, but with age, with weight. "You have one thing they don't." I held my breath. Time. A sudden tremor shook the train, not violently, but enough to remind us both. It was arriving somewhere, again. The whistle blew, soft this time, almost mournful. She stood. I stood with her, but she didn't walk to the door. Instead, she turned to me one last time. "When the doors open, don't listen for a name. There won't be one. Only you will know if it's the right place to leave." I frowned. "What if I don't?" She stepped back into shadow. Her form began to fade. Not dramatically, not with light, but like smoke drifting into old wood. "Then you'll be back, like me." Her final whisper, "And you'll forget why." Then she was gone, the car empty again, except for me, and the sound of the clock ticking. 11:57 p.m. The clock read 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes. 3 minutes before the doors opened again. 3 minutes before the loop either reset or broke. I stood in the center of the train car, alone. And then, not alone. A faint shiver in the air, a distortion. And there he was, the boy, small, barefoot, eyes wide, not with fear, but with the weight of knowing too much for someone his age. He stood at the far end of the aisle, and he was watching me, not beckoning, not warning, just waiting. I took a step forward. He didn't move. Another step. Still he stood. When I reached him, I knelt slowly, lowering myself to his eye level. His breath fogged faintly in the cold air. I noticed now he was trembling, not from cold, but from something older. I whispered, "You don't have to stay here." He blinked. Once. "I don't know where to go." His voice was softer than before. Not haunting, not otherworldly, just lost. I nodded slowly. "I think that's what this place feeds on." He looked down. "I was going to see my sister. We were going to light lanterns together. I picked one with a gold dragon. She always liked those." He held something in his hands now. I hadn't noticed it before. A small paper lantern, crushed, smeared with soot. Broken in one corner, the red paper torn, but the golden dragon still shone through, faint beneath the ash. I felt a lump form in my throat. I reached out, palms open. "May I?" He hesitated, then gently placed the lantern in my hands. It was light, too light, but warm. I examined it carefully, then looked at him. "Do you want her to see it?" His lip quivered. "She's still waiting for me, isn't she?" I didn't answer with certainty. No one could. But I said the only truth that mattered. "She remembers you." That was enough. He exhaled, shaky. "I didn't mean to stay here. I just didn't know how to leave." His eyes looked past me now, toward the fog outside the window. "Every time I hear the whistle, I think it might be her calling me back. But it never is." I nodded slowly, then said, "But it could be, if you choose to believe it is." A pause, then I handed him back the lantern. He held it tightly close to his chest. Will it still light? I think it never stopped. And at that moment, the whistle blew, one last time. Not mournful, not loud, but clear. The train slowed, the lights flickered, but did not fail. The clock ticked forward. 11:58. We both turned toward the doors. They were still closed, but the pressure was building, like the whole train was inhaling. The boy took a step toward them, then turned back. Will you come with me? My heart skipped. I looked at him, then at the lantern, then at the doors. I shook my head gently. Not yet. He nodded, no fear in his eyes, just peace, something I hadn't seen here until now. The doors opened. Beyond them, not fog, not darkness, but a soft gold light. No platform, no station, just warmth and a faint smell of burning incense. He turned, lantern in hand, and walked forward, and just before he vanished into the light, he turned back and smiled for the first time, and then he was gone. The doors closed, the light faded, the train remained, but the silence had changed, not empty, lighter. Something had shifted. One seat, his seat, was now empty in a different way, not abandoned, not frozen, just finished. A chapter closed, a name remembered. And on the bench where the boy once sat, something rested. Not the lantern, but a ticket. I approached it, picked it up. It was blank, just white cardstock, no departure time, no destination. On the back, one word handwritten in soft black ink. Thank you. I folded it gently, slipped it into my pocket. I sat down on the bench, exhaled. The clock above ticked once more. 11:59, almost midnight, almost the end, or almost the beginning. Midnight came without ceremony, no trumpet, no crash, no scream, just a soft hum, like the sound an old light bulb makes before fading out. I sat there on the bench, staring at the now empty seat across from me, where the boy had once sat, lantern in hand, eyes wide with memory. Now there was only stillness, a stillness not of death, but of completion. I reached into my coat pocket. The ticket was still there, blank, except for the word, thank you. I turned it over. Nothing on the other side. I stood slowly, expecting the train to lurch again, to begin its endless glide into memory. But instead, everything stopped. The hum beneath my feet silenced. The soft vibration vanished. And then, without warning, the train doors opened. No whistle, no fog, only silence and pale, unmoving air. Beyond the doors, a platform. I recognized it, the original one, where I first stepped on. But it was different now, less decayed, less dark. Like a layer of dust had been gently wiped away. The clock above the platform read 12 wash, not blinking, not frozen, just still. I stepped out. My shoes touched tile. I expected to feel the pull again, that terrible weight of regret, but there was none. Only a strange, fragile lightness. I looked back at the train. Its windows were dark, its frame still, like an animal that had gone to sleep after a long, exhausting hunt. Then, without sound, the train vanished. No flash, no blur, just gone, as if it had never been there. I turned in a slow circle. The platform behind me had changed. No rust, no vines, no broken lanterns. The bench was still there, and on it, a new paper lantern, unlit, untouched. I walked toward it, picked it up. It was the same design the boy had described. Red paper, gold dragon coiled in mid-flight. A second chance. A promise kept. Too late, but carried forward anyway. I held it in both hands. Then I heard something. Footsteps. Real ones. Not echoing inside a memory. Not silent and slow. These were hurried, sharp, human. I turned. A station worker rounded the corner, wearing a reflective vest, flashlight in hand. He looked surprised to see me. Sumimasen, he called out. Koko wa shyosarenai eki desuyo. This station's not in use. I opened my mouth, tried to explain, but I realized I had no explanation. No one would believe me. Not really. Not about the passengers, the boy, the woman in white. Not about the ticket. I looked down, my pocket. Still there. The card stock. Still warm. I gently placed the lantern on the bench, turned back to the worker. I got lost, I said. He nodded slowly, a little confused but not suspicious. This place, it's not on most maps, he muttered in Japanese. No idea how you even found it. Strange, I smiled faintly. Yes, I replied. It is. He offered to walk me back to the main road. I didn't argue. As we walked, I glanced over my shoulder one last time. The bench, the lantern, still there. And above it, the station clock ticked forward. 12:01. Alive. Present. I got back to my apartment sometime near dawn. The streets of Tokyo were still half asleep. Vending machines buzzing softly. Delivery trucks hissing through intersections. Everything felt so normal. So alive. I peeled off my coat. It was heavier than I remembered. I reached into the pocket. The ticket was still there, but the ink had changed again. One final time. No longer blank, no longer recollection, not choice, not thank you. Just one word, small and gentle. Remember. I stared at it, then folded it neatly, slipped it inside a book I hadn't touched in years. One Hana might have liked, if she'd ever existed beyond my regrets. That night I lit a candle, turned off all the lights, sat beside the window. And for the first time in a very long time, I remembered everything. Thanks for watching the whole video. Please give me a like and subscribe to the channel to watch more interesting stories.